Well, welcome to this second webinar titled What is Theory and How Can I Find One for My Thesis? First of all, a couple of words on the organization of it briefly, as there are some new attendees this time. The webinar will take an hour and 15 minutes, and we have enough time for questions halfway and at the end of the webinars. And what I would like to ask everyone this time to use the Q&A section for questions. WebEx offers us two possibilities for questions. One is the chat option and the other one is the Q&A section. So please let's try and use the Q&A section only today for questions related to the content. If you wish to send me a private message or you wish to send each other a message, that's obviously perfectly fine. And for that reason, you can use the chat option. What happened last time is that I received questions via both channels, chat and Q&A, and I missed a couple, which I responded to afterwards. So I'll do my best today to check both. But once again, my request, please use the Q&A option to ask questions related to the content of the webinar. And I'm going to have a look at those questions twice, so somewhere halfway and at the end. But anytime they pop up, please feel free to post them. I see that there are more people joining us, which is a good thing. So hopefully there will be more than 35. And as you know, I'm recording the session and making it available on the newly created YouTube channel, which I've communicated with all of you first via our closed Facebook groups. And there's also a link to the YouTube channel on NetSchool in the graduation phase 16-17 course folder. So in case for whatever reason you cannot find the link on the closed Facebook groups, then it is posted on NetSchool. And then all the taped webinars will be uploaded there. This one probably tomorrow, as it takes a couple of hours to convert the materials. And for the people who joined last time, the similar evaluation of the webinar will occur, meaning that the moment we finished, you will be automatically redirected to a very, very short survey asking you how you experienced it. Thank you for filling that one last time, and my request again to fill it in this time. I'm particularly interested in topics that you might have, which you consider worth it for another webinar. We already saw some good suggestions together with Hans and Joy, and we decided that some of them probably need some attention, but later on in the process. So we are definitely considering your suggestions. It would be really amazing if you can share them with us. So today, this webinar actually seeks to answer the following questions. What is the use of theory in practice-based research? And it's inevitable not to answer the question, what is theory? And I think one of the most interesting ones for you is how to choose theory for my own study and where do I place it? Even though I'm not going to take a lot of time to answer the last part, but I will give you some ideas in where that is placed. And very soon it will be rather clear, actually, that theory in general belongs to your literature journey or literature search. So I think this webinar is offered quite on time, considering that the majority of you either just started with defining your search strategy or you have already your search strategy and you start writing your literature review. Because actually part of reviewing the literature is determining which theories you're going to use when you explore the answers of the research questions that you have formulated, or when you think of the knowledge that you need in order to reach the goals that you have set out for your project. So theories in general can be used regardless of the approach that you have decided upon, but the use is slightly different. For instance, in quantitative approach, researchers usually use theory to provide an explanation about the relationships that they're interested in. And in that case, we talk about relationships between concepts. And later in this webinar, we'll talk about relationships between variables. In qualitative research, the use of theory is slightly different. It might aim to be the final outcome of a project. So following the logic of inductive reasoning, to formulate a theory and explanation at the end, to understand differences in behavior, differences between departments, or it may be used as a lens through which you investigate the phenomenon of interest in your study. And in mixed method research, some of you are most probably going to apply that idea of combining qualitative and quantitative research methods. Eventually it will mean that you may either test some theories or use the theories to answer already your questions or generate them. So why would you use theory in practice-based research? Well, I would like to start with one of the very famous sayings of Kurt Lewin. If there's nothing so practical as a good theory. It's for sure one of my favorite ones. Nothing is so practical as a good theory. Good theory informs our research journey, or it frames our research journeys. It actually helps us answer the questions within which existing knowledge domain, within which existing theories is my research situated. It also very much helps you to define your terminology. What are you exactly talking about? Think of words as loyalty, communication, satisfaction. They're all those broad and very often vague terms which might cause misunderstandings. Theory also help you to stand on the shoulders of giants, as we call them in academia. So find out, for instance, what, how, when, and where was measured. Find out how concepts related to your study already have been measured in the past. Simply put, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And last but not least, by using theory in your research, you develop into this expert that we expect you to develop within a particular topic, within either the HM or FN field, and within a particular topic in that field. But at the end of the day, that's what you're going to show with your research report. And theory is a key to success there. What if you do not use theory? You might end up using all those catch-all phrases without knowing actually what they mean. Think of loyalty. It's a topic which is a topic of interest to many of you, and very often when I ask what is loyalty, then almost everyone finds it extremely difficult to tell me what. So instead of ending up in those catch-all phrases, theory will help you to define exactly and to know what you're talking about and what you're investigating. If you do not use theory, you will for sure end up conducting this superficial research. You will have to invent the wheel again. This is especially applicable if you decide to come up with data collection questions yourself. So if you decide to come up yourself with a questionnaire instead of using an existing questionnaire, an existing scale or measurement instrument, as it is called again. If you do not use theory, you'll most likely miss some key elements. I would like also to use the metaphor of Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland didn't know where she wanted to go, so when she asked the cat which door she should take, she was told, well, it matters where you want to go to, which one you will take, and that actually applies to you too. You have a certain goal in mind, and theory will for sure help you, will assist you in your journey to reach that goal. Otherwise, yeah, you can end up somewhere, just like Alice. And in this list of what if you do not use theory, for sure, I must add the lower likelihood of effective interventions. Theory will help you at the end of your project to come up with justification why the intervention that you came up with, and by intervention I mean the advice with specific recommendation of implementation you came up with, the business model that you have created, the prototype of your design intervention that you came up with. You'll be able to come up with a justification why you expect that will be the effective intervention, the effective solution for the problem that you have sketched at the beginning of your journey in the context of your report. So, going back to the use of theory, and the idea that you are at this point in the phase of setting up your search strategy and starting up with your literature search and literature review. Once again, I would like to repeat that the literature actually determines what theories may be used to examine your research questions or the goals. And as I said, we'll focus first on the quantitative studies and then on qualitative studies. But in general, when we talk about theory used in quantitative studies, theories are used as explanations for the answers to the questions that you have formulated. And when we talk about qualitative studies, those use theory as a lens that shapes what is looked at. And somewhere halfway of this theoretical part of the webinar, I also have 2 examples worked out, which I hope will be able to exemplify what is meant by all those definitions of using theory in qualitative or quantitative type of research. I'm not going to talk about mixed methods during this webinar, but the principles and the ideas that I will discuss related to quantitative and qualitative studies obviously apply for mixed method approaches. So let's zoom first into quantitative research. And before I can talk about what is theory in quantitative research, I need to take a couple of minutes and talk about variables. For the very simple reason that variables are used to shape those theories. And if you have designed your project by means of quantitative research, it's inevitable that you have to talk about variables. And even if you have designed your based on the principles of qualitative research, you'll see that variables and concepts are also concepts I wanted to say, but also elements of your approach that you might want to use. But for sure, in quantitative research, that is the case. So those variables, as they shape research, the first item to look at is what is a variable. A variable is a characteristic of an individual or an organization that is measurable. Another term very often used, mostly preferred by psychologists, is a construct. I don't want to confuse you, so we are going to talk about variables only, but you might come across some papers calling the variables actually constructs. Example of variables are age, gender, and any attitude or behavior that you want to measure or you want to investigate, as for instance leadership, power, resistance to change, you name it. There are hundreds of examples of variables which are part of your project. What is important to remember about variables is that variables have a temporal order. So we talk in terms of first X, then Y. So first X occurs before Y can occur. And as I also already said, they're measurable or observable. That will for sure apply for qualitative research. And we recognize different types of variables. The first one is and very much related to the temporal order of variables, is the independent variable. Independent variables are the ones that probably cause, influence, or affect outcomes. Pay attention to the verbs I'm using here: cause, influence, affect. Very typical verbs for quantitative studies. And I call it cause red because if you recall the complexity within social sciences, and for sure you will agree with me, in social sciences, when we observe human behavior in their natural settings, when we measure attitudes, it is extremely difficult to talk about causation and talk about causes. Because if we talk simply and purely about causes, it means that we have eliminated all other factors besides that one independent variable which might cause something, which you all know that in real life it's not possible. It is possible in a medical laboratory where all variables are controlled. So I'll come back to the control variables in a minute. But in real life and in the types of projects that you're involved, we actually talk about investigating relationships, about investigating associations and correlations, and not so much causes. Independent variables are also called treatments. They are also called manipulated variables or predictors. That's common wording for the same type of variable. Obviously, the idea with independent variables is that they have an effect on something, and that will be the dependent variable or the outcome that depends on the independent variable. And those are also called criterion variables, effects or responses if, for instance, you have a quasi-experiment set up, probably responses will be the most suitable wording for your dependent variable. You can also talk about intervening or mediating variables. Those are the variables that stand between the independent and independent variable. Think, for instance, in terms of study preparation, which influences test results. We can say that the organization of studying ideas is an intervening variable because it comes between, or it stands between study preparation and the test results. Another one is the moderating variable. Those are actually independent new variables, which are very often measured together, as they are expected to have a joint impact on your dependent variable. For instance, you might be interested in how age influences self-esteem, but if you're going to study how age in combination with attitude towards life, so that will be a new moderating variable, together influence self-esteem, you might see how the effect of age is strengthened, for instance. Then in quantitative research, we also talk about control variables. Those are independent variables that are measured and so-called statistically controlled. Very often, for instance, size of an organization is reported in papers as being a control variable. Imagine that a study is about the relationship between innovation and performance, then we already know based on the organizational behavior literature that the size of the organization is might be also an independent variable of influence, and in the statistical analysis it is control for how big an organization is, and see if that changes the relationship between innovation and performance. And but last but not least, that's a so-called confounding, also called spurious variables. And usually those variables are not measured, they're not part of any study because they're not that easily detected. And I remember an example used a lot by one of my professors in Rotterdam at Erasmus University when I was studying for my master's. And he was always using the example of a study trying to find out what is the effect of lights at traffic. So traffic lights, the intensity of traffic lights on the number of accidents. So the intensity of traffic lights is the independent variable affecting the number of accidents. And this was part of the investigation. And it took the researchers a very, very long time to actually find a spurious variable, a confounding variable, which has influence directly to the number of accidents. So that wasn't the lights at a traffic light, but it was the change in speed because of those lights. The idea that when you see better, you drive faster, and that influences positively the number of accidents, so more accidents will happen. So why are those variables important to refresh your memory about? Well, they're important because we need to realize that in quantitative research and in theories in quantitative research, when we define theory, theory is actually the scientific prediction or an explanation of what the researcher expects to find out about a set of interrelated variables. So in your case, you'll most probably talk about the dependent and the independent variable, maybe a moderating variable. That's the level that we expect you to go to. But for sure, we talk about bivariate relationships. So, and you use the theory to actually predict and to actually already give an answer at the beginning of the research questions that you have posed. And for that purpose, you will formulate a hypothesis. When you conduct your study, you will find out a proof, or we are not going to find proof to explain or to confirm your predictions, and you will be able to translate that proof into the specific context of your study. I have an example coming to clarify what is meant by it. To make it a bit more complicated, and that will be definitely clear when you search for the theory related to your project, the theories can be also distinguished based on their breadth of coverage. So we talk about micro-level theories, meso-level theories, and macro-level theories. When we look at briefly at the micro-level theories, those are the theories which explain behavior in a small segment of time, in a small segment, or between a small number of people, the interpersonal relationships, for instance, within a small team. The meso-level theories link the micro and the macro level. That's kind of obvious. But when we use meso-level theories, we basically study organizations, you can say, or communities, or even social movements. If your research is related to sustainability, you might be, without yet knowing, using one of those meso-level theories related to understanding social movements. The macro-level theories wouldn't be, in my opinion, the type of theory that you will use for your projects. Those are the theories which explain societies as such. Think of national cultures, think of institutions, think of institutions, an example of institutions, for instance, are organizational structures. Organizations which copy their structures is very much related to the idea of institutions and routines and how they're reproduced over time. So if we can translate this into even different forms of theories, as already said, if it's about interrelated variables or interrelated constructs about which you're able to formulate your hypothesis, this also means that the theories describe how these variables are related and why are they related. And when you read papers or textbooks, you may find at least 3 forms of those theories. They're not always called a being one. That's why I think it's a good thing to realize that theories can be a set of hypotheses. Sometimes there are like 15 interconnected hypotheses, and altogether can be labeled as being a theory. Very often you're going to see a series of so-called if-then statements. So if this happens, it might lead to what exactly. So that explains why you can expect this relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. And very often theories also include visual models. So that's not directly related to the conceptual frameworks which are part of your studies. And the most simplest form that you can come across in papers is that X is related to Y, or X influences Y, and that the relationship is actually a positive one. I didn't want to overcomplicate with different errors, but quantitative researchers actually try to think in XY visualizations, and then usually you will see the dependent variable on the right side and the independent variable on the left side. The pluses and the minuses used in those visual models actually tell you something about the direction of the relationship, positive or negative. That also makes sense. So the older I get, the less I see, the higher I'm educated, the better, or the higher salary I can get. Those are the positive and the negative types of relationships I actually mean. But there's a problem with theory. And the problem is that many people don't like studying theory, even though, thinking of Kurt Lewin, there's nothing more practical as a good one. And one of the issues is that many people don't know how to study theory. And another problem is that good theories are often written by academics, and you all know by now they're not really famous by writing in the most accessible style. So how can you disentangle then the theories, and where do you find them in a couple of minutes? Once again, a theory as being an explanation of how something works in real life. That's it. It's actually rather simple, and those theories usually come in 2 flavors. We can talk about conjectures. So we may be onto something, but it is not largely tested yet. Or we talk about the so-called robust theories, a system of well-tested ideas. And when we talk about well-tested ideas, by this is meant that the hypothesis related to that theory have been tested over and over again in different settings, different geographical locations, with different populations. And you can imagine that if there is some consistency or similarity in the results after those studies, that ideas turn into those robust theories, and that based on those robust theories, I would even argue that lots of stereotypes occur and we use them in our daily communication, or we read about them in the general media. So theories are informative. It can help us to understand the world of, and it can help you in this current situation within your thesis, but also later on to make your organizations better, improve the organizations, the departments that you work for, even the whole industry that you work for. I'm going to skip for the time this short video. I think I've been showing this to you and other colleagues on a couple of occasions already, and I will share it on our YouTube channel. That's the video with the 7 blind men investigating an elephant. And why is that important? Because there's another problem with theories. Any theory ignores some aspects of reality, and any theory is really being oversimplistic about others. So why would we even use some theories if that's the reality? Why would we only consider a small piece of the whole puzzle and not just aim to find that big, overarching theory, the complete explanation of how department, organizations, or whole industries actually work? Well, there's a problem. Probably by now you have experienced this whole idea of chunking. We know from cognitive psychology that we have the capacity to think about approximately 7 pieces of information at a time. So inevitably we chunk. We break all those large and complex concepts into smaller pieces to really understand them. And then we chunk it up all together. So if we think about organizations as an example, you really need this integrated view to understand an organization. You need to look at human resources. You need to look at division of power, teams, departments, division of work, management, types of departments, the products, the environment, etc., etc., and then you have the full company. Unfortunately, one single researcher cannot study all those elements in the organization, so you will need to focus in order to understand even a full company, let alone a full industry. So when you understand in detail one of the parts of this of the company, of the industry, you are able to reach this in-depth understanding, and by doing that, you basically show that you have been developed into the reflective practitioner that we want you to develop. So make it more practical. If a theory is a set of assumptions about how variables are related, and there's some kind of a logical relation between them, somehow we need to be able also to visualize those variables, called concepts here on that slide, and their relationships. And very often, so that's why this is called the element of good theory, it means this: a good theory needs to tell you what is related to what. So what is the explanatory concept related to which phenomenon of interest? How is it related, positively or negatively? And the most important one, why? So if we take the example of the queuing theory. The queuing theory is a very interesting one, and it's generally considered a branch of operations research. And queuing theory deals with many, many questions. But one of the questions of queuing theory is what is the effect of waiting time? Well, as we are in a service-related environment, the relationship between waiting time and customer satisfaction is a very topical one. Look at what I have worked out in here. So waiting time will be my independent variable. The dependent variable will be the level of customer satisfaction. So those are the two concepts in this theory, in the queuing theory. And what queuing theory actually states is that waiting time is negatively related to customer satisfaction. The more one waits, the less satisfied he or she is. And as this theory has been developed already into being a robust theory, we know a lot about waiting time. We actually know that it's not about the actual waiting time, but it's about the perceived time. And the perceived time is also a concept slightly more difficult to measure than the actual waiting time, because the perceived time on each turn is influenced by the length of queue, the type of queue, and the rate of movement. I only mention here 3 influences of the perceived time. And the queuing theory also offers at least 3 explanations of why waiting time, specifically perceived waiting time, is negatively related to the level of customer satisfaction. Well, it has been shown that there's unoccupied times feel longer than occupied times. When we have nothing to do at the airport or at a waiting area in a hospital, for instance, then it feels longer. Another element as well is anxiety. So specific feelings when we wait also makes us feel that we wait longer. So they're not 3 here, but 2 explanations offered, and so on and so forth. So to give you an idea that the queuing theory, if I'm interested in the effect of waiting time or the influence of waiting time on customer satisfaction in a hospital, in a hotel lobby, at the queue of a festival, in a cinema, the queuing theory for sure might be the one that I want to use, because already in advance it will help me understand, for instance, that it's not the actual waiting time that I'm going to measure, that I have to measure, but the perceived time. It will taught me exactly what I can measure when I talk about perceived time. And it will help me by looking at those answers of why these variables are related. It will help me to formulate hypotheses. So where do you locate those quantitative theoretical perspectives of those quantitative theories? I think it goes without saying that it's a specific literature. I have 2 or 3 slides at the end when we finish with the qualitative theories as well, in what I mean by specific literature. So you will have to find what is the existing body of knowledge related to my topic of interest. So far you've been thinking in terms of topics and research questions and goals, but actually now as well, at this point, you will have to ask yourself, within which knowledge domain, within which body of knowledge does my topic fit, in order to know which theories that you need to look at. To find theories, you can do so by spotting those papers where connections between dependent and independent variables are explained. And at a certain point, you will have to what's called script out, so start writing out your theory section. And if we think in places of where does that belong within the whole report, I would say most probably in the literature review chapter. So what is commonly done is you name the theory that you plan to use, you state the central hypothesis. Sometimes there's one, sometimes there are a lot more than one, I mean, in this case. You present, you explain actually how you're going to use this theory within your project, so how are you going to apply it. And later on, you also describe the variables which are related to the theory that the theory you're planning to use, and you really think in the if and then logic. How does this script out looks like? This is an example of possible lead sentences that you might want to use. I would like to read it out loud, and later on you see that I have filled in the blank spaces with an example using qualitative theories. So the script out is not only applicable when you follow the logic or you use quantitative theories, it goes also for the qualitative ones. So the theory used in this project is, you name the title of the theory, it was developed by, you will have to identify the key authors as we call them, the source who developed the theory. It was or is used to study what exactly, which topics are part of the theory, so what are the concepts, the answers of the what's. What is then theory indicating about the relationship between those variables? So you will be able to identify hypotheses as mentioned. And then you will have to tell us, applied to your project, and in line with that theory, what do you expect? What kind of influences between your dependent and independent variable do you expect? And again, the most important one, why? Why so, based on that logic of the theory. Before I move to the qualitative part, I would like to have a look if we have questions. Let me pause sharing my screen with you and have a look at my questions. Your questions. Let's see. Danny's asking if you're allowed to use the conjectures and not the robust theories. Yeah, sure. I think there are some topical, trendy and currently part of the debate issues. Take the whole idea of sustainable business models. Sustainable business models is one of the research lines within our academy. There is a reason why we have a professor guiding that research line. Same goes for investigating experiences through the designing experiences lens. So sustainable business model and the theories related to it most probably are not going to be not robust yet, because that is really a development which you can coin as being recent, something that professionals and academics start worrying about, so making it part of their professional career or academic development recently, and recently can be from the last 5 years. So absolutely, there is no rule saying you can only use robust theories. Sometimes there are just no they're not there yet. It's just as simple. Let's see if I have another question related to the content. It is more a practical question. Malou is asking if I'm going to upload the presentation which I'm using now. I wasn't planning to because it is taped, but if you really want to have the slides, then I don't mind sharing the slides with you, not at all. So I can do that. So can you please tell me if more people are interested in the slides? Because if it's only Malou, I'm going to send them to her. But if more of you, for some reason, want to use them, obviously I'm happy to share them with you. All right. Yes, okay. You want to have the slides. That's perfectly fine. I don't see more questions. Somehow the system shows me that there are 9. I see only 2. Okay. I will check. I will have a look again. Helene is asking if finding a theory, I don't quite understand what you mean with linking food. So maybe later on you can tell me, because I don't understand what you mean by it. Oh. Let's see, you've tried to explain it in another question. So Celine is asking, determining the liking of a food, would that be the dependent variable? I'm not quite sure if I understand and if I can help you out. Maybe afterwards I can unmute you when I finish, and then you can ask again a question and see if I can help you out. Because I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure, Celine, what you mean. Is that okay with you? I'll come back to it. Clara is asking if you use the sentences you just showed us, would that be plagiarism? Well, I'm going to share at the end of my webinar my sources. This is from one of the books that I'm using, and they're simply meant as suggestions, as leading sentences. You will see that you will need a lot more to explain the theory that you used, what is it, and how you applied it. So consider those as leading sentences. If you're going to follow the idea of those leading sentences and maybe literally copy-paste part of it and then fill them up with the details of your study, I don't think that that will be really a plagiarism, because it will be just a couple of words. In that line of thinking, the standard academic phrases which are given to you in year 3 when you study English would also be considered plagiarism. So I don't think so, because this is more formulation, more language, than the content of the paragraph will be anyway very much different, as it will be tailor-made to your project. So I don't think that's a big problem, actually. So Selina, I have to come back to you because I don't quite understand at this point what you mean. So I will read it when I finish with the qualitative theory use. So let's resume sharing my screen with you and get rid of your questions here. Voila. Alrighty. So if we move into the use of theory in qualitative research, then the use of theories is rather different, I would say. First, and the one which I expect that you're probably going to use the most if you follow this logic, is that you're going to use theory when you conduct qualitative type of research as a lens through which you look into your phenomenon of interest. I also like to call this lens glasses. It is as if you're going to put these theoretical glasses, and you will know by looking through those glasses, you will know what to observe. It will help you define the questions for your interviews or your focus groups. It will help you to define the codes that you need to do participant observation, if that's the data collection technique that you have decided to use. Some qualitative researchers, following the idea of grounded theory, they actually place the theory at the end of their research. Formulating theories or shaping and formulating explanations is the goal of such kind of projects, and they follow purely the inductive process by collecting first data, so collecting evidence, you can say as well, and trying to, based on the data, trying to understand the reasons for human behavior, trying to understand why some organizations outperform others, trying to understand based on the data they have collected why some departments function more efficient than others. So it's a different type of use if you follow this logic. And some qualitative studies, which I do not advise you to do, they follow no explicit theory at all. Why is this not working? Voila. So when you use theory in qualitative studies, obviously the first step is to decide if you use one, then to decide if you have decided to use one, which, as I said, I recommend you to do, identify the purpose. Is it a mean? So is it simply the lens that you're looking through, or is it an end? And you will see that the narratives about the theory, also in qualitative studies, will have to be placed somewhere early in the research report. And I think in your case, probably as part, again, of the literature review chapter. Where do you locate such kind of theories? Well, the places are not that different than the places where you locate quantitative theories. However, in quantitative theories, you will be looking for relationships between dependent and independent variables. Those will be the words as well, which will be an indicator for you that those are quantitative type of theories, or these theories used in quantitative studies, I must say. So in terms of qualitative studies, very often those are studies related to cultural themes, studies related to understanding meaning, understanding shared meaning, studies which already at a rather initial stage in the titles, in the first paragraphs of the introduction, mention that they're based on grounded theory. So that might be an indicator that you are spotting a theory for qualitative use. And I want to share with you an example from my master thesis, as I used organizational learning theory in my master thesis, and I used it as a mean. So I used it as a theoretical lens to study innovation ability of one single case company. And specifically, I used one model within the organizational learning theories, and that's the model of James March. The model is actually coined exploration versus exploitation. To put it simply, the idea behind the exploration and exploitation of knowledge is that when you exploit current knowledge, you are actually reusing existing knowledge within the organization. You're becoming better in using that knowledge. That might lead to path dependency, and that might be destructive on the long run for organizations because that might limit their innovation ability. In contrary, March actually claims that when exploration of knowledge is taking place, this is where new ideas, new ways of thinking, breakthrough initiatives have been coming up within organizations. And one of his claims is that on the long run, organizations need to balance between exploitation and exploration of knowledge. So they need to strike a balance, as it is called. So what I've done in my study, I actually formulated 9 propositions. Mind the language, there were no hypotheses because I was not planning to test any hypothesis. March does not talk about hypothesis as well. He gives suggestions of how organizations can strike this balance between exploiting and exploring ideas. So I have formulated 9 propositions, and those 9 propositions are on a less abstract level. So they say something about how organizations need to be structured or could be structured, so structural characteristics. What could organizations do? So really strategic actions, which, according to March, can be considered as being significant to strike this balance between exploration and exploitation. And actually, this was really extremely helpful, as those propositions helped me to formulate the data collection questions. They were not the same as the propositions, but they're all in line with the propositions. And they helped me a priori already formulate some codes, so help me prepare the data analysis as well. As I used the glasses of March, I wanted to specifically find, I was hoping to find actions, examples of structural agreement within this case company, which will help me understand how their innovation ability developed over time. To give you an example, because 9 is too much to put on a slide, but one of the propositions was, number 4 to be specific, was modus turnover combined with rules for selecting employees is associated with exploration. So that's one of the expectations of James March. And it was actually interesting to find out at the end that within this case company, which I was investigating, it wasn't a hotel or a specific environment, it was actually a pharmaceutical company. The contrary was found. I'm going to spare you the details, but that was really actually the only interesting finding from my whole study, because all the others were in a way confirmed to a certain extent. All others, I mean all other 8 propositions. Well, this is a lot of text. So this is the same script with a couple of, no, I think all these sentences I used them, but then completed with this example of my master thesis. I will read it out loud. The theory used in this project is a theory of explanation of exploitation versus exploration in organizational learning. It was developed by James March and reported in his seminal paper in 1991. It was used to study the relationship between the quality of organizational learning and primacy, which means being first among one's competitors. This theory indicates 9 propositions related to structural characteristics and organizational actions, and so on and so forth. So you see at a certain point, so as applied to this project, I'm basically also explaining how I used or how I applied this whole idea of structural characteristics and what I was expecting to find. This, by the way, was about 2 pages in my introduction, which I kind of tried to squeeze in one slide to give you an idea how these lead sentences can help you explain what you're using. So how do you choose your theory? Couple of practical tips. I think it's very helpful, if you did not have done that yet, to really draft this working title for yourself. My study is about, and think in a short question, what is the influence of festival site on the city of Amsterdam? I think already that this might be a question related very much to sustainable models, to sustainability in big cities. But it's just an idea, it's just a hint. But start with it. Then define your search strategy, which is very much learning the literature review assignment. And maybe contrary to what we've been saying so far, when you are identifying your theory, I would say focus on some of your textbooks first, see what I have prepared for you in a minute, and then explore the energy databases for papers and, if needed, industry reports. Also, a good idea, and have been always very helpful to me, is to discuss with your graduation coach, with us, meaning Joy, Hans, and myself, which theory we might think might be relevant for your research. I think if you talk to a couple of experts, it will save you lots of time. Many of us know the key theories and are able to give you some pointers in terms of names or titles of papers or books to look at. A little bit more how to. I think at this phase it might be also helpful to brainstorm about potentially important issues related to the topic of your research and to think of possible explanations. You can search for those prior studies on the very similar problem that you have in mind and look at which theories were used there, which theories were reported to work best and why. Think, for instance, if you're interested of the effect of social media on perception, and that's kind of a question, what is the relation between social media and perception of whatever kind of product? And then I would say, when you brainstorm, you can also think, to which perspective can I study this question? And to which broader knowledge domain does this question or small topic actually fit? And I think this is a marketing, initially my gut feeling will be marketing related question. You can also search for general theories, as I said, which might be relevant for the type of problems, and not necessarily the question, but think in the types of problems. So going back to the context of your project. The example of office relocations, a very typical FM-related question. I would say you could go back to CREAM and operations management and find out what kind of theories and models were presented to you there, and see if you can use them as a starting point to spot that one theory which is important when we talk about or when we investigated office relocations. A hypothetical example again. Imagine that your main research question is, what is the effect of service quality on how satisfied customers are at catering company X? This is my brainstorm. I've been thinking, and in terms of visualizing these relationships, service quality will be then my independent variable, customer satisfaction will be the dependent variable. I think intuitively we all can say that this must be a positive relationship. The higher the service quality, the higher the level of customer satisfaction. And I already have some questions which popped up in my mind, which I listed on the left side. When we talk about, first about definitions, so how is service quality defined? How are quality and satisfaction measured. I know already, because I've been talking to people, that when we talk about service quality, we talk about expected and perceived service quality. They're two different issues. If I think back of my first years at the hotel management school, definitely we have talked about the tangible and the intangible aspects of service quality. I think in FM terms that will be the soft and the hard services, for instance. Also a distinction between types of services or elements of the products which are related to quality. So that's why you see here the blue ellipse with product, delivery, and environment. So words popping up in my mind. And thinking hard of what I studied, I know I've learned something about the SERVQUAL model and the GAPS model, because that one was associated with these differences in what people expect and what they receive. Somehow, my intuition is saying that the whole idea of experience economy and the Pine and Gilmore must be related to customer satisfaction, at least. I also know something about Brady and Cronin and how they adjusted a model specifically related to service quality, and they used the idea of SERVQUAL. What about KPIs, so key performance indicators? And those are very much related to definitions and effects of benchmarking. See, so this will already give me an idea and maybe even refine my search strategy, what to look at, and decide at a certain point if, for instance, the SERVQUAL and the theory behind it, the one of the 5 gaps, is the one that I'm going to take as a basis, or maybe Brady and Cronin, their refinement of the service quality model is more recent, but that's definitely something that might be very helpful in your quest. And then, going back to focus on textbooks first. What I've actually done is I asked my colleagues from support to give me a list with all the books which you can buy via Study Store, at least all the books for this academic year, but I think that some of those books were also mandatory for you when you were first, second, and third years. Maybe not all of them, because there are some changes in the books, but just to give you an idea. So what we're looking at is the list of all books that first-year students can buy now, and I even had a bit more information if they apply for first, second, third years and which chapters. But why I'm showing this to you, because you already see the core courses, and in a way you also see knowledge domains popping up. And then what I've done is I took this one, the one with the blue arrow. So that's the organizational behavior. So you have 2 books on organizational behavior, and I took the mandatory one. And this exercise took me, what, like not even half an hour. First of all, I looked at the index, and it's, imagine that I'm interested in motivation. Imagine that my bachelor thesis will be about what motivates employees in the sport facility that I work for. Well, already the first page of the index tells me behavioral theories and motivation. I didn't have time to actually quantify how many times in the index the word theory is mentioned, but I already see on the first page behavioral theories and motivation. And that will lead me to a specific chapter, which is the motivation and the meaning of work. And good enough on again, the outline of the chapter. I didn't even read the chapter, but it already tells me which are the key theories. There are 6 names on it: Skinner, Maslow, Hertzberg, Adams, Fromm, and Goldthorpe. Some of those are definitely known to you, with an explanation of what they suggested and the titles of the theories that they have formulated. And then the next table on this very first page of the chapter is also telling me, it's really like a summary of those key theories. The first one of the extrinsic and intrinsic motivators, then the behavioral theory of motivation, then the content theory of motivation, the process theory of motivation, and the social theory of motivation. And I will say, voila. Sometimes it's much easier to find what you need. But the first step in order to choose, for instance, even a textbook from this list for yourself and look at is to also find out and to realize what is the bigger core course, or what is the knowledge domain related to your topic. So that's why I listed this for you, with the idea that the BBA standards, as you know them, they're actually the knowledge domains within our programs. Both of our programs fit into the domain of economics. So the BBA standards, as you know them, accounting, business law and ethics, economics, finance, MIS, marketing, organizational behavior, research techniques, strategic management, and operations management are actually the knowledge domains within which you can also search for those robust or less robust theories. So thinking first, it makes the whole issue with the BBA standards and domains is a bit more complex as well, because sometimes a question can be approached from different knowledge domains. It can be approached from the domain of marketing, but also economics, also business law and ethics. Very often, though, within the definition of your project, within the goal of your project, the requirements from your commissioner, if you have one, it is already rather clear what is the perspective that you're requested to adopt. And if not, that's for sure something that you can discuss with us within the course if you follow the course, or with your coach. And then do this simple exercise as I have done now with the organizational behavior book. So, in sum, I'm doing quite all right with the time today. Social science theory, because those are the types of theories basically that you're using, they're usually placed at the beginning of a project, the beginning of the study, and they help you formulate either propositions or hypotheses. Theories also assist you in coming up with definitions, in describing the variables in your study, and explaining, if it's a quantitative type of study, how those variables are related. Theories might be visually represented, and so you will be you'll be able to spot easier and quicker what are those relationships, what are the direction of the relationships, if it's a theory which predicts influence of a independent to dependent variable. A good theory for sure will guide you through the data collection process, quantitative or qualitative. It will help you define what you want to ask. It will help you define what you want to observe. Extremely important and very relevant if it's quantitative type of study that you're aiming for, is that a theory will, a robust theory, most probably also have well-tested measurement instruments. The people who are in my group, group 1, and I think some of you from group 2 already seen a paper that I posted yesterday in our Facebook groups from Jasper, where he found, where he's using the model of service quality, refined model of Brady and Cronin. And Brady and Cronin have been good enough to share the well-tested measurement instrument. So that's why they're so useful to find those papers. And well, last but not least, it will really help you to justify your findings, help you to find structure as well in representing your findings. So Duck and Birdie, they know what matters in science. Very impressive professor, but does it work in theory is indeed the question that you can ask. And on the left side, I have the references. The paper of Wetten is the paper of Wetten is shared with the people following the course, and I used some of the tips provided by Creswell in chapter 3 of his book on research design. I think this book was one of the recommended books in the syllabus, but I think also if you look a little bit online, like on SlideShare, you might be able to find even scanned copies of the book of Creswell, maybe others, not necessarily this one, but I know he's for sure present on SlideShare. All right, I think we are actually done with this part, and it's almost time as well. So the next webinar will be on research questions, concepts, and variables. So you see how what I described today, maybe a bit more theoretical and less practical, will definitely help us next week when we talk about research questions, about the verbs used in the questions, about the concepts to be measured and how these can be measured by means of variables, different levels of measurement of variables, and so on and so forth if it's a quantitative type of study, and also talk about the place of variables in qualitative type of study. And what I would like to do now is I would like to turn to possible questions and see if there are any. Let me see. Let me go to the Q&A. Where is the Q&A? Voila. I'm just looking if now we have some new questions. Let me see. Danny had one, but I think it was answered. Yeah, I think I did. I answered your question, Danny. Job is asking me something. Aha, what happens when multiple theories are found? Would it be okay to use multiple ones or using one or more desirable? Well, I'm going to answer with the answer which all of you probably dislike the most. Well, it depends, because very often theories are somehow related. If you will find though two theories which predict opposite things, or well, then you will face a challenge, because you will have to somehow use the logic of both theories. So in your case, I will say search for the overarching principle between the theories, and yeah, you can definitely use more than one. Might be that you have a robust one and one less robust, but there is no such rule as saying that you need to use 2, 3, 4, or 5 theories. I think Melissa, for instance, asked me, do I need more? Not now, but previously, do I need more than only the ideal surf call? And I don't necessarily think that if you follow the surf call, because there are many of you following the ideal surf call and Brainstorm model, that you need to search for something else. You'll probably find hundreds of studies from the last 5 years based on it. So it depends on the in-depth of the theories and what they predict, I will say, Job. But it's perfectly okay to use multiple ones and combine their expectations in your study. Is human resource management a knowledge domain? Good question, Latoya. Human resource management as such is not formulated within the BBA standards. You've seen it as well. Even though one of the most favorite topics within bachelor theses in our programs is definitely HR as such. I think that you can, it depends on the type of question that you have, but based on my experience, most probably your HR question will fit into the organizational behavior knowledge domain. So the book that I showed you from King and Lawley might be a good starting point. Unless you're talking about personnel costs, then you can also adopt the perspective of finance. But I would say OB will be then the knowledge domain. I have more questions. Let's have a look. In case of research design, is it smart to start with objectives and research questions and do literature after? It depends again. I will say the objectives usually are one of the first steps in the process. You will need to know what's the purpose of your study. What is the type of intervention that you're planning to come up with? What is the goal that you set that you want to achieve with this? However, the research questions as such might be better formulated after your literature review. especially if you have, if you follow the inductive reasoning, and if you have designed a qualitative type of study, or you're planning to design qualitative type of study. Very often you first need more literature. You first need more to understand the theory, what the theory is providing you as a lens, as factors to look at before you can even formulate questions, if you formulate any research questions. That's exactly what I have done with my master's thesis. I first had a goal, then I had to read and report on organizational learning perspectives, find out the model of James March in my example, and also understand why James March's model was actually very suitable to investigate my case company. There was a very simple reason. I wanted to know and to understand the innovative abilities of that specific case company, and James March's model actually does exactly that. It relates the whole idea of exploration and exploitation to primacy, meaning who comes with new products on the market. But I wasn't able to ask any research questions before I understood the whole idea of this theory and also decide how am I going to use it. So, yeah, you can do both. And I don't see more questions here at the Q&A section. Well, the only person I believe I did not come back to is Gerlin, actually. If Gerlin, if it's okay with you, I would like to talk to you one-on-one because it's very complicated what you're asking me. So I don't believe that it's the place here during the webinar to do so. So maybe you can call me via Skype, or I will send you a link to a new meeting via WebEx in a couple of minutes. Please let me know if that's all right with you. Just send me a message now, and then hang on for a bit longer so I can try and answer you. All right. I think then I would like to thank you all for the questions and for your presence. And I'll for sure see some of you soon here at the Sibeliuslaan and some of you online. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.